Just believe us, we trying to teach you the rights to read you. It's just procedure, baby.
Trials, instruction, procedure. AWS gon' teach ya. Trials, instruction, procedure. AWS gon' teach ya. Here's a tip, don't get it twisted.
LatinoJustice PRLDEF has been at the center of civil rights movement in America for the last 50 years. Everything from housing to policing, and now the onerous effects of ICE on the Latino community. Today we have a very special guest. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, César Ruiz, Associate Counsel at LatinoJustice. Very nice to be on.
And we're going to be talking all about Latino justice. This is Attorneys with Swag. If you like what you see, please like, comment, subscribe, and let us know if you have any future episodes that you would like us to discuss. So give us your background.
So, like I said before, I'm César Ruiz, Associate Counsel at LatinoJustice. I was born and raised in New York. I grew up out in Long Island. I moved to Queens when I was about 20 years old. Was out there for 6 years and then been in Manhattan the past 5. Professionally, I've been associated with LatinoJustice since 2021, my entire legal career. I specialize on redistricting, election law, and constitutional law, fighting back a lot of this administration and in other states anti-voter suppression work.
Okay, and what's your staff attorney at LatinoJustice? Like,
So
how did you get into the role?
I'm associate counsel, and I started as a fellow. So I transitioned, so now I'm in a permanent role with the organization.
Okay. So tell the audience about LatinoJustice. Like what's the history, and how, did you always want to work at an organization such as LatinoJustice? Like, how did you get into the role?
So, I mean, from a young age, I was, impacted by systems that dictated the way that I lived. So I've always had a personal connection to this work. I've always wanted to help people in my community. I grew up very impoverished. It was very difficult. I moved around a lot when I was young. And I didn't see justice in the systems that I was being exposed to or that my family was being exposed to. And so I was always attracted to creating societal change, to making lives better for people in the Latino community. And so that's when I got into law school, I found out about LatinoJustice PRLDEF and all of the incredible work. I mean, first I was amazed as a Puerto Rican, born and raised in New York, that there was a PRLDEF. Like, you had heard about NAACP and all of these impact organizations, but you didn't really hear like Latinos' stake in that and how Latinos fought and the rich history. And so LatinoJustice was founded in 1972 by 3 young Puerto Rican badass attorneys that were really focused on who's fighting our fight, who's fighting in our communities. It started out really focused on the Puerto Rican community, but as the organization grew, it realized that, there was a larger need in other communities. There were a huge influx of Dominican immigrants from all around the world that came here. And so the need became bigger and the mission expanded to include all Latinos. And so LatinoJustice was founded in the 70s at a time of great social change. I mean, we're talking about the civil rights movement. We're talking about all of the activism that was happening, not only in the streets, but in the courts. And it was really founded to stake our claim and really speak to the identity of Latinos on a national level. So it really was started at a time of activism with the Young Lords and really inspired by that change, but saying we need to take it to the court as well. It's not just that we can just organize and protest. We have to take it to that next level if we want to be seen. And so a lot of the cases were really initially brought to bring bilingual education. So we're a champion of bilingual education. The New York City school systems really did not focus on that. They didn't speak that need. We focused on discrimination in hiring. That was another great area. And then our portfolio expanded. We now focus on 5 primary areas: voting rights and election law, which is my specialty. We do policing and prisons accountability on a systemic impact level, economic engagement and economic empowerment for Latino communities, leadership development, and then immigration, which is a huge part of our portfolio now.
And for those who don't know, what does PRLDEF stand for?
So PRLDEF is a Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, and it was based off the same model as NAACP, LDF, and that was initially the community that we were champions of. In 2008, around that time, we started to reconsider, like, what is the constituent we're serving? What does the community look like? And by that point, the communities that we had served have radically changed. It was no longer predominantly Puerto Rican, but Colombian, Central American, all different types. And so we adopted the name LatinoJustice to really incorporate that larger community that we wanted to serve, to build trust and to build faith and to let them know that we're here for them.
Okay. And like how does one end up being represented by Latino Justice? Like, do they go in? Do you kind of like scope out the landscape and look for cases that are like the most valuable in terms of creating systemic change? Like, what is the process?
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. It's really about how can we change the law? We're not a shop that does direct services, right? So we're not representing individual clients. We're oftentimes representing classes of individuals and thinking about how can we change the law through representing this individual. So we're really looking at what are positive aspects of the law that we want to reinforce and protect. New York City, New York State has led the way in a lot of ways. They also have led the ways in wrong ways, and we've had to sue them as well. And so where we see those gaps, where we see those overstepping of states on people's rights, that's also where we step in to defend people's rights, right? We have a federal constitution, we have the First Amendment, we have the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and we really focus on centering the Latino narrative, defending those rights, and uplifting those stories to inform how we show up in these spaces, and to hold the law accountable, to hold the state accountable, to hold the federal government and even local governments accountable to that standard, because there is a long history of overstepping those rights when it comes to the Latino community. And so it's a combination of intakes, right? We have a hotline that people can call, they can reach out to us and let us know that something is going on. I think that's one of the ways. We also have community-based organizations that we work in partnership with, like Hispanic Federation, Poder Latinx, that do a lot of direct community engagement that inform what our priorities are. Sometimes these community-based organizations are under attack, whether it's their funding, which we've seen with this current administration, or the ways that they're running their voter registration operations. And so we focus on defending them because we know that they're the lifeline to really doing outreach in the community, and that defending that front line is really important.
Now, are your cases centered out of New York, or do you do cases internationally?
So we do cases
Not
nationally.
internationally, throughout the United States.
Yeah, we do cases nationally. So I'm based in New York. My license is in New York. But when you do federal practice, which is what I do a lot of, we're oftentimes in federal court. So I've litigated cases in both New York and Florida. I've done both federal and state trials. And so we litigate all around the country.
Okay. All right. So I guess, like, what's like the, like, cases come in, like, I guess, what's the tipping point from, like, just hearing about an issue and it turning into a case that you guys actually take on?
So it just starts like word of mouth, right? Like I had a conversation with a former client in one of my voting rights cases, and she's like, we're just hearing about this issue in the community and we don't know what to do. And we start very basic. We ask just kind of follow-up questions. Okay, who's involved? Where is this happening? Who can we get in contact with? And the biggest question is who's being impacted? Can we get in contact with that person? And so we build a case much like we do any other case. I think the current climate is very difficult because a lot of people feel fear. They feel that they can be persecuted, and that's what we've been seeing in practice. And so it's harder to build cases, but we start very much from that very foundation of meeting people where they're at, whether it's a community partner that we trust or meeting the individuals and kind of vetting the claims. But we really start from the ground up, just from a very basic place of just what's going on. And I think that's consistent with how all of us practice. We need to know the facts before we can give any legal advice, before we can form that relationship to understand, is there something we can do?
Okay. And you said there's 5 specific areas in which Latino justice focuses on. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll start with the area that I focus on. So I do voting rights and election law, and I also do immigration. So voting rights and election law, I could break it down to 2 major themes. It's redistricting and anti-voter suppression work. So there's one major case, Shelby County v. Holder, that deprived us of a critical protection, which is pre-clearance. And so what we've seen from that...
What's it called again?
Shelby County v. Holder.
No, but the pre-clearance.
Pre-clearance. So pre-clearance was, to explain it in just like really basic terms, it made sure that bad states couldn't pass laws before it was pre-cleared by the Department of Justice. So that's an important protection because it prevents the floodgates that we're seeing now, where people are just acting in the worst interest of voters. And this was historically in places where they suppressed votes, so in the South, so Florida, Georgia, all the states that we're seeing lead voter suppression efforts now. Even most recently, there was the 2020 election, and there's been this kind of uprising claims of that our elections lack integrity. And so that has really created a host of voter suppression laws on the state level that we've had to respond to nationally as well. So the two fights are redistricting, which is one person, one vote, really trying to keep representation for Latino community members consistent with what the demographic growth is. And the second is just trying to make sure that we're upholding access to democracy, which many people presume, but is not the actual reality, whether it's bilingual election materials, being able to access a polling site, being turned away at your polling site, like these very basic things that many people in other parts of the country take for granted are real fights that we have to have. So that's the voting rights work. The immigrants' rights work is also a big part of our portfolio. I mean, it's the most active right now. We have an administration that is prioritizing immigration enforcement, which has created a lot of rapid response. It's created a lot of impact cases. And that work really spans from like information requests, just trying to understand how the government is working because they are shrouded in so much secrecy, to then holding them accountable for unlawful detainments, pushing back on 287G agreements that really reinforce local support for federal law enforcement, organizing with community members, and really just problem solving the many things that we're seeing. And so the immigration enforcement piece is something that we're very active on because we have to be. I mean, this is all the things that we're seeing in LA, Chicago, and all of the places that we're active in. And that is a huge part of our work.
So, I don't practice immigration. Well, from the outside looking in, it seems like a insurmountable battle you're up against.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an existential threat, right? I mean, when we look at the enforcement, when we look at who's being picked up, we know it's disproportionately Latinos. Even Latino citizens are being caught up. I think I've been impressed by the community organizing in the ways that we've been able to complement those efforts. I mean, our communities have been under siege, arguably, since the founding of this nation. I think it's just more visceral and visible now. When we talk about who's being detained, it looks like people in this room, or somebody we know has been impacted by this. It's just prominent now, and it's unfettered. And so I think we're seeing that starkness, but it's not unprecedented in history. I mean, the first term pretty aggressively went out after some of the similar groups. I think what's more insidious now is that he has the ability to legislate through the Congress, and the courts have radically changed since that first term, and that has made things very difficult. Because you could bring a case before, get an injunction, and you had some sense of protection up until it was finally decided. That's no longer the case. I mean, these cases are being appealed because they know that these forums are favorable, which means that we're not even able to protect people as these cases are being resolved. And these are cases that take multiple years. So the amount of harm that you can wreak immediately is exponential.
Well, I mean, the courts are the way they are for our lifetime.
Yep.
They're not changing.
Yep.
So
what is do you have any involvement in this in the six districts that he's sending I guess DOJ officials to? The 5 in California, and the other one is in, I forget if it's Atlanta or which state?
Maybe Chicago, because there's a few. So our partners at MALDEF are working, and we have like people on the ground. Our focuses are like more New York, Florida, and we collaborate with partners on that side. Chicago is another area that I think we're expanding, and that's another area that's like a high priority target. But it's also, we're seeing kind of two things, right? It's Border Patrol agents that they're sending to these places to do immigration enforcement, and they're also sending a National Guard to enforce like criminal violations. So that intermix kind of creates an intersection of issues that are very complex to impact. So we rely on local partnerships that have relationships that can uphold that, but there's also a lot of like active litigation. There's the Noam v. Perdomo case that is working its way through, and then there's a case that I was even reading about on the way here in Chicago where they're challenging the use of unlawful force under the First and Fourth Amendment as well.
it seems so ridiculous to bring the national. I mean, we've spent decades and billions and billions and trillions of dollars militarizing our police. Why would we ever bring in the National Guard? I mean, our police forces have enough firepower and money and everything to do the job just as efficiently as the National Guard can.
The only difference is that he thinks he controls the National Guard. He doesn't realize that they're state their state, their state.
Let me tell you something.
militaries.
If that day comes that we're worried about with the National Guard, the police are going to be right there with them. They're not on the side of the people. They've never been. They never will be.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's a lot of what we're seeing in the enforcement. It's people being put directly. These are not people there to keep the peace, right? Because I think that's what people say. These officers are here to keep. These are mostly like peaceful demonstrations. I mean, people have an emotional reaction to seeing somebody's family being ripped from their arms, as any human being
should,
as any human being would.
As the First Amendment gives them the right to,
you
and
guys
express that.
Are you guys involved in the 26 Fed case where the ICE agent attacks the woman whose husband just got stolen from her?
So a lot of these claims are like 1983 claims, and they're often represented by private individuals. So we definitely keep tabs, but we look for like the systemic things. So when we talk about like the Floyd case, which I know was on.
Well, just for the audience, what is a 1983?
So 1983 is if there's a violation of your civil right that you're able to bring an action in tort, so for damages, so you're able to get money.
Okay.
The cases that we look at look to stop something. So we're usually looking for injunctions, and sometimes we'll bring claims for damages. We have a mix of it, but right now our focus has been on limiting local cooperation with federal officials, especially in like Long Island, Nassau, and Suffolk County. We have a case that is going, so it was from actually the first Trump administration. They were unlawfully like stopping people, like robbing them, and Suffolk County has resisted any accountability. Yeah, they were like straight up. So the officers were stopping people. There was cooperation. They were stopping people.
You were holding people on ICE detainers and stuff like that?
And so there was a lot of racial profiling. Like this is all stuff that's going to be impact in the next case. They denied everything, but people came forward. And it's just kind of brazen activity that happens when there's lawlessness with people enforcing the law, right? When you allow people to kind of run free, that's exactly what some of these individuals do. And there are very clear bad actors that are reinforcing and doing harmful things. And that's what this case is about. That case is ongoing. That's been for many, many years, because I said like these cases take forever. And trying to hold them accountable, as you can imagine, is because, you know, the court views law enforcement with a specific lens. It makes it very challenging. You have to come with it or don't come at all, because it is a very difficult claim and one that you have to be, you know, precise. I mean, you all do work with police. You know, you have to get that cross.
Work with
like
police?
Not work against police. You don't represent. I appreciate that clarification, but you work defending your clients in court and holding them to that standard of, you know, truth telling and to upholding the law and the truth, which is a lot of what these cases involve.
Yeah.
So, like, depending on the president that's in office, like the Department of Justice cooperation and kind of helping you in some of these cases or fighting against you in some of these cases changes?
So each administration, you know, attempts to enforce these things in very different ways. In the Biden administration, there was less like visible enforcement in like the areas like the big cities. It was a lot of like focus on like the border. So a lot of their activity really focused there, and that's where a lot of the harm was. There were also different rules and regulations that made it easier for people to be processed. You could be within the country with like lawful presence as you were awaiting clarity on your claim. That's no longer the case. They've kind of rolled all of that back in this administration. And this administration has been obsessed with visibility, with scoring political points about targeting specific locations, which has created risk everywhere. There's nowhere that we can say that anyone is safe. A lot of our work is also know your rights, really trying to get the word out to the community of like, when you engage with law enforcement, whether it's ICE or anyone, like, what are the ways that you should be interacting? Do you have to open the door? Like, if you don't feel safe, because police can lie, police do lie, ICE agents do lie. They say that they're police and they're not, and these are kind of some of the traps that we have to unpack. So our work has been, you know, impact cases, but a lot of the really impactful work has been know your rights information. If people are not informed,
Yeah, that's a really good point you're making. You're saying, I hear this a lot from immigration, that ICE is not a police force. So what are they?
So they're civil like officers. They have the power to enforce civil violations, because being here without documentation is not a criminal offense, even though they frame it that way. It's a civil violation. And so they're civil officers that have federal authority to enforce that, but they have to have a warrant to go into a specific location, and they have to get that warrant signed by a judge. They oftentimes are using like fake documents, and some of these individuals
and to manufacture consent. So, but like here's the problem or the concern that I have. There's as lawyers, there are two worlds we live in, right? The legal world that we're familiar with and what we're talking about, and then there's the fact that they're not the real world, and then what's actually being applied, and they're not honoring people's Fourth Amendment or Fifth Amendment rights. There are abductions going on. They are violating they're running into people's homes. They're running into private establishments. So like even knowing your rights and wielding them is resulting a lot of times in.
I guess the bigger question is, what is, if ICE stops playing fair, which it seems like, I remember the conversation around these interactions being so much about knowing your rights and knowing what you have to say, what you don't have to say, and it seems now we've transferred to a phase where it's show me your papers, whether I had a right to ask for them or not. What is the recourse for people put in these positions? It's like once television, the news basically makes it seem as if they grab you, whether they had a right to or not, you got.
Don't get got.
What is the recourse? So like, is there civil penalties that can even be had?
So definitely, I mean, that's what 1983 for. So if people violate your Fourth Amendment rights, you have the ability to seek damages. It's harder to get an injunction because of a case called Lyons that made it very difficult to get injunctions. They're essentially saying police safety is above people's constitutional rights. You can't stop something prospectively. It has to be eminent. And so that creates real barriers to like stopping the bad thing from happening. And that's a difficulty you're seeing play out right now. The Lyons case was a huge blow to the civil rights movement. It involved a challenge to the use of chokeholds in New York City, experience that many people of color, all the plaintiffs had experienced, and what the Supreme Court essentially said in that case was, no, you can't have an injunction for that. It's not guaranteed that that person is going to come and choke you out like tomorrow. So that's not enough. And so that's a huge barrier to stopping the bad thing from happening. That's not to say that we're not trying to change the law, but let's be honest, this is not a court that's doing civil rights any favors. And so we're, engaging with the tools that we have, which is giving people the information to make informed decisions about what's in their best interest or safety. And that's just a community, forward lens that we have to adopt. When people are detained, there's lawyers that are looking at, was it lawful? Was it, and we're looking at the systemic impact. Like if you're targeting, which we've seen, like disparately Latino groups, then we're going to bring cases that challenge. And that's a lot of what we've already seen. The Noam v. Perdomo case is a prime example. The 4 factors that they used in which the Supreme Court lowered reasonable suspicion was looking Latino, sounding Latino, where Latinos are at, or even being close or where Latinos work. So, that's the real challenge that we have. It's not that people aren't fighting these fights, but the courts are not the friendliest place. When you lower the bar for reasonable suspicion, which they did in that case, it creates a danger and a floodgate for all of our communities, because we could all fall within the scope of that. And that creates reasonable suspicion on a scale that we've never seen in this country.
And I mean, it seems like fundamentally because of that case,
Latino, and we would fall into that.
It like racial profiling is legal.
Yeah, and that's part of it.
Yeah, the 14th Amendment is now not applicable to
characteristics have always been legal. The thing is, it didn't rise to the level of reasonable suspicion. It used to be like we use this identifier, and then we add it to some actual emergency or some sort of circumstance, like a radio run, a 911 call, an actual report says someone of this description in this area. But now they're not even doing that. They're just going to Home Depot and grabbing every single guy that looks like Juan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But what I'm really, really trying to understand is,
it's crazy.
if it's civil, if they are not police officers, they don't have police powers, right? Doesn't that weaken the argument when you think about it? Like, all the jurisprudence on this, all the jurisprudence is case law, by the way, is about police power, government power, and the Fourth Amendment. But if we make these activities civil in nature, are we turning around and saying, well, you don't have a Fourth Amendment right. This is a civil proceeding, and you don't have the right to say this is a constitutional violation. Like, aren't we weakening the argument by not acknowledging them as police?
So I think they are police in the sense that they're enforcing law, and that's why they fall within the Fourth Amendment, because the Fourth Amendment doesn't make distinctions based on civil or criminal. It's search and seizure, and that's the basis by which we bring all of these claims that challenge it. And
Yeah, but
so,
a civil agent couldn't search or seize you, right? Like, it has to
well,
be somebody who has police
ICE,
power.
ICE does have that power through the statutory regime that they've created, and the justices are imprecise. They're adopting assumptions that they carry over, right? One of the cases that was discussed in the Noam v. Perdomo was about immigration enforcement at the border. And this is actually a distinction that allowed and reinforced some aspect of racial profiling near the border, because they were doing an analysis of, who were the people that were frequently being picked up. The law is imperfect. The law is racist and unjust, but search and seizure is civil and criminal, and it's applied in all. It has the equal force in both.
You know what's so crazy is that when you look at like the 100 miles in which ICE can operate, like
CBP,
huh?
Customs and Border Patrol.
Yes, yes. Like they can operate anywhere, but in which they have like the higher authority to like.
Where they can stop you and
It's basically all the fun places you want to be. It's like the countries that want. The countries that want them here, the parts of the country that want them here the most, they have the least power, but they're basically free to harass all the blues places. It's like kind of interesting because all the major cities are like kind of near within that zone.
Well, that makes sense.
And to the point that you're making, they're blurring the lines. I mean, they've blurred the lines between this being a civil and a criminal violation, and they're also working with local law enforcement in many of these places where they criminalize them and then they process them.
And then
immigration system.
if they're acting as in or on the behalf as police and with police, then doesn't it just de facto make them?
Well, the other
police?
thing that I think about a lot is ICE breaks down your door and enters, and they take somebody and they institute deportation proceedings. There's no suppression remedy like there is in criminal court.
So the remedy is, again, like the two are injunctive or damages, but it depends on the circumstances, right? So if they had a warrant and the ability to enter, it's some of these fundamental questions that you ask. If they didn't have a warrant and they just suspected, like it turns on a fact-by-fact basis. But what we've seen from this administration is some isolated or less kind of, like those aren't frequently reported because they aren't individual places. What we've seen more of is the roving patrols, where they're literally just rolling up to locations where they can find as many Latino-looking individuals to just round them up and throw them into a.
They got 15. I read today that they got 15 strippers at a strip club.
It's crazy.
Right off the post.
So
I swear to God.
I heard.
That's crazy.
So the question that I'm trying to get to is, ICE breaks down your door. They don't have a warrant. They have one of their fake administrative pieces of paper that's not a warrant. They break down the door. They take Eugene, right?
Damn.
They grab him. They take him to 26 Fed, and they institute a deportation proceeding or removal proceeding, and they go, you're being removed. You were illegally here. In criminal court, we would file a motion. We would say that we'd do a due process motion. We'd say, all right, you didn't have probable cause, you didn't have a warrant. We'd controvert any, right?
Yep.
We'd seek to suppress both the arrest itself and any statements, any evidence.
Anything
gleaned.
that happened as a
But
result.
the evidence in this case, and we have this saying, we have a case in New York State called Dunaway. You can't suppress the body, right? You can't suppress the existence of the person. So if all they've taken is the person, what legal remedy can you seek in an immigration court to the fact they broke down somebody's door?
So this is part of the distinction between, like, immigration practice is heavily regulatory.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so much change in the law, like over an administration or even over a year or 2 years or 3 years, and that's why it's hyper technical. So when you talk about removals, they have to have a basis by which to remove. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes that comes in like a slip that they'll have that says that we're just looking for this person. And the reality is that the law has reinforced differing levels of protections for different classes of immigrants. So a citizen has probably the peak, the most rights under the Constitution that are vested. And then it's tiered, right? Legal permanent residents have certain levels of rights, and then it goes lower and lower. And these are things that have been reinforced by the Supreme Court decisions. And so when we talk about the individual being detained, the question is like, what is the basis for this person being detained? Do they have lawful presence? If so, then that changes the analysis. If they don't have lawful presence, then the law makes it so that they can be detained for a time up until they're processed. And then it's oftentimes at the discretion of the federal government to kind of dictate what they want to do with that person. I mean, we've seen probably too high profile the Khalil case and then the Kilmar Abrego, which you can see that they can play games with people's immigration cases. And there's a lot of deference to the government built into the law already when we're talking about immigration, because it has this national or kind of foreign relations interest. It's a place where the courts give probably way too much deference than they should. And that means that individuals have to go through the process, oftentimes being detained, find counsel, because there's also not a right to counsel in immigration law. You have to find counsel. And unfortunately, because of the realities that there's a huge for-profit business in the immigration, and there's just not a real, like the resources are not there to get everyone counsel. There are a lot of gaps in the current system. And so probably the examples that we're seeing in the media are just the most egregious, right? The ones that have passed even like, you know, exceed bounds. But the reality is that this is, you know, not a place where there is a lot of resources, and what resources are there are already strained. And right now in this moment, it's beyond reproach. But in terms of like getting out of detention, there's habeas corpus, which is like a federal right to be able to like work through that process. There's the 1983, but you also have to have the ability to find counsel that will litigate this. And at the scale at which it's happening now, it's just, it's not possible to keep up. I mean, these people are being picked up, you know, on a day-by-day basis, and they have a mandate to have quotas that they're reinforcing. I mean, this is at a scale of which that these legal systems and even legal advocates can't keep up. They have to turn away cases because, you know, you can only, you know, diligently manage your caseload to a certain extent. So it's,
are they creating viable 1983 cases every single time they violate individual
if a constitutional
rights?
right is violated, even arguably there's a colorable claim and you want to assert that, but there are also, you know, the law is rigid. Like the law is not meant for everyone to just run to court and vindicate their claims. So there are a lot of gaps. I think that's just the reality in all of the law. That's why advocates fight to push it and to hold that, you know, to hold the law to a broader, to a human standard, which it's not there. Like I can't sit here and say to you that the law is human. The law's interest is in preserving, you know, the law. It is in preserving these institutions that don't think about, you know, somebody experiencing that kind of harm, of having their door kicked in, of having their family member ripped out. And the law doesn't always account for that. I think it's just the reality.
So, among other things, right, in federal practice, you know, in state courts we have venue, right, and we have jurisdiction issues. But in federal practice, it's very common for different district courts from different areas and different U.S. Attorney's Office and different agencies to essentially cede venue to other jurisdictions. So the venue itself, basically it means like, if you're in New York, you know, California can take responsibility for a crime you committed in New York along with the crimes you committed in California and prosecute you for all of it, and you won't have a legitimate motion to be like, well, I'm in the wrong jurisdiction, I'm in the wrong state for this allegation. So the reason why I articulate that is so you grab Eugene from his house, you broke down his door, you take him to Virginia.
I'll take the ride.
Right? You take him to Virginia.
My 1984 will be solid.
But you know what I mean? Now he's in Virginia.
1983.
Yeah.
And the judge there is going to look at whatever ICE hands over, right? Or it's ICE who hands it over, right? They have lawyers who like.
So yeah, there's DOJ, and there's also kind of two tracks. So there's immigration court, which is purely regulatory. They have administrative judges that this administration and previous administrations have appointed to. And there's essentially two tracks. And these are the two tracks that the two notable cases have played out on. So there's an immigration case, and that's where the government has a lot of leeway. They detain you, they assert a basis by which they think that you are they can lawfully remove you, and then you have the ability to contest that through immigration courts.
And that could be all hearsay. It could be just whatever the
and the rules of evidence are not the same as they are in criminal court or even in federal court. The immigration law rules, as I've heard from like my practitioner friends, are very different. They're a little bit more lax. There's not the same standard or precision, and administrative law judges.
To the government, not the defense.
To oftentimes to the detriment of clients that are showing up. With more lax rules, come more pressure to make sure that you're kind of building out your defense And this is all happening oftentimes where individuals are detained away from their family and not able to access kind of basic things to prove a lawful presence. And that's why these cases are incredibly difficult. And then there's the habeas track, which is if you have people willing to kind of put up the defense of habeas is a really complex.
But the habeas goes to the federal district
Federal
court.
court. It'll go to the federal district court.
It's a separate area, right? That's the
But you're
constitutionally
still,
approved courts.
I'll talk about the Kilmar Abreu case because that was the case where the gamesmanship was, I think, on full display. So he was detained in Maryland. They moved him, I think, to like a district that they liked for the immigration
like
court.
Tennessee?
I think it was like Louisiana. It's like the
I think
fifth.
it was Louisiana
yeah.
or Tennessee. It was like
Yeah.
that. It's always those two places, right?
Yeah. So
And
it was a
there's
favorable.
nothing keeping them from doing that. That's just
Oh well, they have the ability because they've already
federal.
detained this
It's
individual.
federal. They can
They
move
can
them
move them to any
anywhere
federal
because
system.
it doesn't matter. You don't have a right to a specific venue
Yeah.
because they're all the same,
Yeah,
right?
it's all
And they
federal.
all cede the venue to each other because it's one agency.
But in it, the logistical thing is that they grab you, and they can just throw you wherever they want.
Yeah,
'cause it's
like
all
for
the federal
example, like
system.
there are people who in New York have judges appear virtually in Texas to do their immigration hearing because there's not enough judges in New York to handle the hearing, or that maybe the judge is not on. It doesn't matter because it's an agency. It doesn't matter where the judge is. He's
federal
he's an
system.
immigration judge.
And it's also like how many spaces do they have to hold like detained individuals? Like are there specific security? Like it's kind of this black box of factors where courts again give a lot of deference to the government, trusting that they're operating in the best interest when oftentimes they're not. And certainly this administration has not. And that's why we've seen these very high profile cases go the way. And unless you have the visibility of some of these individuals, you're oftentimes like we've, in conversations with practitioner friends, they're like, people don't know where people are. Like we don't know how to contact them. I was speaking to like a former client and she was saying like people just don't know what to do. Like they were just taken and we don't know where they're at. There's no way for us to get in contact, and I go through the basics of like, did you get the person's like information? Did they give you a card? Did they give you anything to like be able to discern that?
They don't give anything.
But this is happening at such a large scale that like, people, that's why the Know Your Rights work that we do is so critical. It's like, you don't know how to respond to somebody being grabbed right in front of you, nor should you, right? This is not like something that we can normalize, but it's something that we have to respond to. And that we
So,
respond to.
I guess the question that I've been building towards, right? We now know they broke into Eugene's house without a warrant. They didn't have any warrant or right to break his privacy interest in his home. They take him from New York to Virginia, right? To a detention center in Virginia. They bring him in front of an immigration judge in Virginia and say, we want this person removed. This is our basis, right? He's illegal. He's this, which this is how they're going to call it. And then we say undocumented to be, we don't say illegal, but let's use what they're saying, right? So they say all of this. Is the fact that they broke down the door without the warrant something that can be used to stop them?
What's the remedy for the violation of the Fourth Amendment?
So I mean, it's super fact specific, and I'll qualify that I'm not like a direct immigration practitioner. A lot of my work is on the systemic impact side. But it's like any case. If you're investigating a 1983 claim, you're looking at what are the constitutional violations. If there's a credible Fourth Amendment violation and they violated search and seizure, then that's the claim that you're bringing. That's the remedy. And there's damages.
I think the answer is that they're grabbing people, whether they're breaking down Eugene's door or not, and throwing them into a grinder.
Exactly.
And the fact
Eugene's
that they broke down my door, right, will give me a 1983 claim that I can eventually get damages for, but it's not going to take me out the grinder.
Yeah,
But you're
Right?
gonna sue from
and
the
you go-
Ugandan prison they
Yeah.
stuck you in?
Yeah.
And your recourse is
Yeah.
the immigration process, right? You're going to go and challenge the fact that you were detained.
But they're going to put him in the Ugandan prison. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Mehdi, the answer is I'm in the grinder. There's no coming out the grinder just because
Yeah, but
they got.
there's got to be something. There's nothing.
Well, you have to go through the immigration process. So you have to challenge the fact that you were either lawfully or not lawfully detained, and that's the first step.
Okay, so
And
lawful
then you have to
detained.
establish, and then you have
So
to
there
establish.
is a standard for that.
Yeah, and it's built
Okay.
into the immigration law where you challenge
So
the detainment.
If
There's
they
similarly
did
a bail hearing. There's the ability because people it's the same kind of process where people have to go through a process of,
Okay.
vetting the authenticity of the claim that the government's making.
But for example, Mahmoud Khalil, right, or Kilmar Bego Garcia, we knew from the start. The judges said, "Hey, you can't do this," and they still didn't.
And they
let them
still
out.
did it.
And they were still detained up until that they got like the clarity on, until they want. So you have to go through the immigration court process, which is again like a separate track, and then you're asserting federal claims like in another forum.
Kilmore, they stuck him
And
in
that's if
another
you have the
country,
resources to do that.
right? And then they just deport him again to Africa, like.
Yeah.
isn't it-
And that's the games and shit that we're seeing with this administration. And this is unprecedented. Again, like this is not stuff that we've experienced on this scale or with this visibility. And for the reasons that, like, these are also legal permanent residents that have some of the strongest
Has some
protections in the law.
status,
When
yeah.
we're talking about individuals that have less protective, so like TPS, or individuals that
What's
are
TPS?
temporary protected
Temporary,
status,
yeah.
which grants you the ability to be like deferred enforcement action against you.
Is that like a refugee or?
So it's
asylum
it's a
seeker?
recognition that the conditions in the country are so poor that we have to allow them like refuge in our country. So historically, it's not something that's been politicized or weaponized. It was just a recognition that these are individuals that are coming to escape hardship in their country, and they're oftentimes applying for asylum or to adjust their status. And DACA, which is deferred action, it's individuals that came when they were young. They weren't able to adjust their status for one reason or another, but they weren't enforcement priorities. But again, with this administration, we've seen
Everybody's
all
on
of
the
that
list.
flipped on its head. But even with legal permanent residents that have some of the strongest protections, they've used political motives to say that you are not, that you violated some form of, the agreement, or you lied on your application. So they're kind of fabricating and making things up that they don't have the evidence to support. And that's why you've seen some of these individuals. But you've seen the games. As soon as they get through one hoop, they're having to hop through another. And that's just the reality and the difficulty, even with people that have those strong protections of the law.
And I apologize because this is, of course, very passionate. We're very passionate about this, and we're very interested in it. It's very exciting. But you also were telling us about your election work and your advocacy.
Because there's 5 specific areas that Latino justice is focused on, I realized trying to discuss all 5 and then figure out the future of Latino justice in general would probably be too disjointed. So I guess we've discussed immigration. If we're gonna move on, before we move on, what is like Latino justice's like current focus, and what do you see this playing out for that specific track of Latino justice's like work?
Yeah, so I mean, one of our big cases right now is challenging President Trump's Birthright citizenship executive order. So he passed an executive order that said certain classes of undocumented individuals, their children who are born here, do not have the right to birthright citizenship. So this is kind of like probably.
Yo, I forgot about that issue.
Yeah.
I'm busy.
I thought didn't the judge say that this
So it's
order
enjoined?
appears obviously false, like
Yeah.
obviously
So it's
illegal?
gone through each level, and Casa v. Trump was the case that went up on a preliminary injunction, and they invalidated that preliminary injunction and said everybody has to run to court and get an injunction. And so we're seeing kind of the second phase of that play out. So this administration, their tactic has been lose, appeal to the Supreme Court, get
it
a
up
favorable
there.
decision,
Yep.
and then kind of
Start
restart
over
the
again.
process again. And the PI is the first kind of step in that. So PI is a preliminary injunction. All it does is stop the thing from happening, which is a really important thing because these cases take so long. And there's been a lot of gamesmanship with that. But our case is really focused on what does the Constitution say? The Constitution is very clear that anyone that is born on U.S. soil is a U.S. citizen. This has never been controversial. It's never been challenged. It's even when it was challenged, the Supreme Court like handily rejected it and said anyone that is born within the confines of these border, with very few limited exceptions, is a U.S. citizen. And so this is a fight that we're fighting right now, and that's going to be a huge impact on the Latino community. We represent 3 individuals that were expectant parents when we filed that we're going to have children, that seek to have children in the future. We represent New York Immigration Coalition. That's an organization that does a lot of grassroots organizing, community education, advocacy, and direct services work for these individuals. And then Rural Migrant Ministries, which is another membership organization. And we're fighting to vindicate the right for Latinos that come from wherever they come from to have children here that have rights, because if not, it creates statelessness. It creates they have nowhere to go to because of the laws of other countries and because
that's a crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't even think of that. Like, and then we for the first time in history we create a citizenship of stateless people.
Oh, it's not the first time. It's
Oh yeah, right.
It's been like that for Palestinians for 100 years.
So it's certainly been that way for other people.
Right?
But
They have a state.
Well,
It's called Palestine.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And the same thing is true for Afghans for years. They can't go back. All those people.
Roma people too.
All
I
those
guess some have a
people
state.
who were like in the government that was set up after the Afghanistan war, they were all kicked out when the Taliban took over again. They have nowhere to go. And Donald Trump recently, didn't he withdraw all of their? He was like, all of your asylum seekers are denied. Go back. Like,
each country handles it differently. The way it's been handled in the United States was we built it into our Constitution, and we've enforced that. Anyone born within the confines of this country is a U.S. citizen. That's
what is it? That's
pretty-
an article. Is that in an article? Or is
it's in the Constitution. I want to say it's in. I can't remember the precise article, but it's built within the Constitution.
It'll be there.
It's the so there's a specific clause. It's the Birthright Citizenship clause. It literally says
it says
if you're
about
born
all
here-
naturally born
Any
persons, right? All naturally born persons get the protections of
within the
citizenship.
jurisdiction thereof, and that's the point where they said, well, if your parents aren't here, like with documentation, then you're not within the jurisdiction. Again, it's a very novel.
When the Constitution was
no,
created, there was no
if you
documentation.
commit a crime here,
the
you're
contradiction
within
is that you could
jurisdiction.
be criminally
Yeah,
liable.
exactly.
You could be civilly liable,
100%.
but technically you're not within.
Yeah.
And it's again like it's the law being turned against Latinos in a very
The
insidious
Constitution
way.
couldn't have considered there was some sort of documentation that says you're legally. People came.
It wasn't even focused
and
on.
that's it. They came.
Yeah.
It wasn't even focused on documentation. It's just the right that if you're born in this country,
You're
Exactly.
part of
you
this
are a
country.
citizen.
Yeah.
That you are within.
Yeah.
That was just again, and they've lost everywhere that they've brought this case because this case is being litigated nationally by different groups, and now because of Casa v. Trump that made injunctions only specific to the parties. We have to fight this fight everywhere. We
Is
have to bring
anyone-
everyone.
But so that means that. So, I guess what I'm trying to say, like, that means every individual, meaning every individual that has birthright citizenship needs to get an injunction to
So-
not be subject to
So there are kind of
immediate
two ways.
deportation?
There's like two ways. One is class action, and that's what people have to amend and do. That's what a lot of the plaintiffs have done. So you move for class certification. So you represent a class of individuals that are impacted, and then you're able to get injunctive relief for those individuals. So that's one way. The second is if you show up in court and get it yourself, and it's a choice, right? So what we've seen is a little bit of both. We brought our case because we had concerns that this was going to go a way that created a huge risk of harm. We had community members that were impacted, that were living in fear, that were eminently having children, that were like, we can't take that risk to let someone else fight this fight. We have to fight this fight. And so that's why we went to court. We represent the organization, the individuals, and we're fighting this fight.
So yours is a class case.
Yeah, we certified for a class, and then other cases have also certified
So
for
if
class.
you get an injunction, it will apply to everyone in the country.
Yeah, and that's what we're,
the
that's the claim that we made. The judge hasn't decided our motion. Judges can also sit on decisions, and that's part of it. What this judge has decided is that the injunction that was granted in one of the other cases, until that's resolved, they don't want to resolve this. Which is how a
who's the
lot of the
judge?
judges, I can't remember the name,
But
not really
I
good with
feel like the clarification I want to understand is that this injunction is keeping Trump from enforcing the interpretation that if you have birthright citizenship, you don't, and I can just snatch you out of the streets, right? Like, is that what it's doing? And if you're not currently being protected by one of these injunctions, does that mean he could do it in the meantime?
So currently the state of the laws is enjoined until it's appealed, and they changed that because they did get that relief, and it's going through the appellate process right now.
Okay.
People have that protection because one of the first cases that filed the Casa v. Trump case, they applied for a nationwide injunction, which the Casa v. Trump initially invalidated. But we have not seen any enforcement because these injunctions remain in force until they're overturned by the Supreme Court.
Oh, okay.
So
That's the
other
part that's
judges have issued injunctions.
Yes, and there's
that are nationwide,
yeah,
and those have not been.
they have not been
reversed.
overturned yet.
So there's a dispute within the jurisdiction.
Split?
So because it's a nationwide injunction, it has nationwide injunctive effect. So judges have the ability to manage their dockets in ways that see fit. So a lot of it comes from like wanting to conserve judicial resources. We're also seeing like judges come under attack, and so judges are moving strategically to say, how can I preserve relief for parties? We don't know how the law is going to settle. The cases are on different tracks, and this is kind of just something different. So if you have the protection, and there's no dispute about that because the government has said in our case, we're not going to enforce this law, then the judge doesn't have the inclination to act until there is a real imminent threat of enforcement.
So what's the status of LatinoJustice's case right now?
So right now we just finished our motion to dismiss filing, and we're waiting to hear back from the court. We feel really great about the claims that we made, but again, because this case is working through on other fronts, I think the justice is waiting to see how some of those things may impact this case before making a decision. But we're waiting for decisions. The unfortunate part of litigation is that it's very slow. It's not at your discretion.
Exactly.
And if there's not an imminent threat to your client, which, you know, we're in a great position that there's not, they're not going to move to really act. And then we have to force the issue. And so it's waiting for a decision on various motions that we've submitted.
Fuck, I thought my job was exciting.
Can you do like sort of like a quick like message to the viewers, like this is the right we're fighting for and this is how we're doing it, like a quick like 30-second sort of thing, so that people can always see like this is what this is about and that's what our position is, and we're currently winning on that issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, this case is about if you're born in this country, you're a part of this country, and that's not disputed. It's built into our Constitution. It's the bedrock of our identity as a nation, and it's a well-recognized right. And so if you fall within this classification, even if you don't, if you're born here, you're a U.S. citizen, and we're going to continue to fight for that.
Okay, we're gonna put him in the next legislative endeavor. We're gonna make sure he gets on the state assembly for sure. All right.
All right, so that's where the immigration track of Latino justice is at, and I know you said there's 4 other ones.
Yeah, and just to even close the loop, because we talked about a lot.
Yeah.
We focus on tracking enforcement. That's a lot of what we do, transparency, and then holding people to like the letter of the law. So that's a lot of work that we'll do continuing and going forward within Latino justice. And then really focus on local law enforcement and their cooperation with federal law enforcement, and really trying to limit their reach, and then bringing claims, you know, for individuals where their rights are violated. I mean, we have a trial that we're going to next week that is vindicating the exact types of activities that are unlawful under the 4th Amendment. And so a big focus on search and seizure and vindicating those rights, which is important, which is the only check that we have back when they do violate these rights. And people, you know, are scared now, but they are coming forward and they're letting us know. And it takes that bravery that we rely on to really show up in the ways that we can, and we will continue to.
And just to unpack that fear, because I think what's like kind of being said, but may not be explicit for the audience, is this idea that like a lot of people's rights are being violated, but if you don't necessarily have a protection of a certain class, you might not feel brave enough or safe enough to actually vindicate your rights in the legal system, basically, or make yourself a party to any case, basically.
Yeah, look, we've all had clients. I mean, getting them to court is half the battle. I think the way that we frame things is from a very human perspective. If this is something that you care about and that you feel comfortable coming forward with, we know it's going to be emotional. We know it's going to be difficult. You're going to be in front of a room. You're going to be in front of a judge. There is going to be pressure. But if this means what it means to you, then we're going to fight with you, and you're not alone. And that's the mantra that Latino Justice has adopted. We show up in the community, we show up with community partners, and we show up with our clients. I'm ready to defend them tooth and nail. That's a school of thought that many of you all have, that we have. We're concerned about, you know, telling our story, telling our clients' story, and giving them space to speak about how this has harmed them, and to uplift that story in a very human way, which is important for all the work that we do.
Is it harder now than it was pre-January 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's harder to ask clients to take these risks when you don't know what could happen. I mean, you don't know that the, you know, parallel immigration proceedings that they may be going through will go their way.
Yeah.
You're really relying on a lot of X factors, and you're trying to give them some sense of hope, some sense of stability when you can't. So we've had to have very difficult conversations about risk assessment for each client. And, you know, we've had the conversations with clients where we said, you know, these are the facts, these are the risks. We can't make that decision. It's up to you. If these things happen, these are the things that we could possibly do. But we're also not shy about what the current state of the judiciary is and what some of the fault lines and challenges are, so that clients can make an informed decision. And, you know, I'm shocked with how brave some of these people are. They say, like, this isn't a choice for me. Like, I don't have a choice. Particularly the individuals that we represent in the Birthright citizenship case, they said, I don't know what I would do if my child like doesn't have the stability of citizenship. We can't go back to where I came from. That's not an option.
Yeah.
So this is it for me. And it sobers you, right? I mean, because we are humans doing, you know, civil rights work. But when you have that like very personal level, it makes the fight all the more important. It makes the way that you show up, the way that you prepare, the way that you attack these things, a part of the way that you want to push back. And that's a lot of what we're doing. But we can't do that without our brave clients. We can't do that without people speaking up and speaking out. And so I think my message to people is, I understand the fear, but like, you're not alone. Like, I think it's just as simple as that. There are people fighting. It may not always feel that you have that safety, but there are people like LatinoJustice. There are people, you know, within our movement that are trying to fight back.
So, you know how like domestic violence victims, like their shelters are secret and confidential, and they have like all these extra protections, and they don't even like to tell anyone where their locations are. Is that a viable option for these people while they're trying to litigate? Is there some sort of protection that could exist in a similar capacity?
So one of the things that we've done in the Birthright citizenship case is move to have our clients go under pseudonyms. So they're not personally identified in these cases. That's a huge protection.
Good question.
No, but
No,
but it's
I was
right
wondering
now,
the exact same thing.
because what we argued was like there's a very real threat of
Retaliation.
removal, of retaliation. I mean, this is an administration that has built its brand on intimidating people. And if we're not able to protect our people, then that means we're not able to show up in court. And that's been a huge protection that's been able to allow the clients to feel some sense of peace, because a lot of them were concerned about becoming, like, because when you file a case, it's like all in the media, like people want to reach out, they want to get the stories. I mean, we've had reporters come to us and say, well, your client doing it, we're like, we're not comfortable exposing them like that. Like they're, you know, going through their process, and we don't want to create more complications. And being part of a case is already complicated. You're subject to discovery, invasive questions, and
Depositions.
Yeah, depositions where they can ask invasive questions about them, and they have to answer it on the record. And so these protections are really important. Again, part of our intake with our clients is we sit down and we go through all of these things. These are all the things that are on the table. We say, we're going to be here to defend you, but there's only certainly the way that we have with the current state of the law. Is it something that you're comfortable with? And we do comprehensive interviews. You have to, when you're interviewing a client, get all of the facts so that you're not surprised when they give an answer
Of course.
that the other side loves. And that's a part of the preparation work that we do. But the pseudonyms help because they take some of that pressure off them, where it's like they're not in their individual name capacity. They're not be able to identify. You have to give some identifying information to establish standing, the ability to bring a court case, but you're able to protect them in ways. And judges that get it, or like the judge that we have in the New York Immigration Coalition case, seems to be understanding of like the risk of harm, and that's why they granted, you know, the motions for pseudonym pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like even if the other side objected, which they didn't, they understood and granted that protection. And that's a critical way that we can defend people's anonymity and the way that they can feel a little bit more comfortable going through the process, because it's a really invasive process.
Is there anything people who are watching this need to know about ways that they can assist these efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the know your rights stuff is really important, is educating people. I mean, we assume education, you know, and engagement with law enforcement. We have certain assumptions that I mean, culture, like Puerto Rico, like I grew up with a natural distrust for police. You know, my parents always told me, like, do not open the door if I'm not home. If you see somebody knock on the door, even if it's police, like that. But every person has a different touch point with like these systems. And within the Latino community, there are very differing experiences with law enforcement, which mean that spreading this information is really important, particularly with the ability that federal law enforcement and law enforcement in general has to lie. I don't think many people know that. I don't think many people know that law enforcement can lie.
I tell people this all the fucking
tell them
time.
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
They
I always
can
tell them.
lie to you. They're gonna lie to you. This is part of their training. They have like the only truthful statement that a police officer is ever going to tell you is anything that you say can and will be used against you.
And they don't even say it that way.
The most literal thing that they're going to
Yeah.
ever tell you.
Yeah.
I won't lie,
Everything else is a
when you
fucking
do an
lie.
arraignment and the client wants to spend
Yeah.
a good chunk of the interview talking about what they were promised and not promised, I was
What
like,
they
my
told
man,
the cops,
you
what the
listen to the
cops
wrong.
told them.
Your sheet is too long
Yeah,
to be still listening.
That's what I'm like, dog, you know better than like
Yo.
motherfucking like.
Yo, I be trying
man.
to tell him like, yo, my man,
It's
like,
it's
yo,
the first time
okay,
being
yo, like, yo,
arrested.
your sheet's too long to be listening to the cops,
Man,
bro.
you still
Like,
falling for this shit?
But it's people are intimidated by law enforcement. They see somebody with a gun. They see somebody, with the and also with what we've seen with some of the federal law enforcement is that they're using false pieces of paper. Like if somebody doesn't have the ability to read and write, you're just kind of trusting what this person's communicating.
Don't trust the police. Period.
Yeah.
Don't
Well,
trust.
here's the thing, right? You have to remember, the majority of people aren't being interacted with by law enforcement in a negative way. Maybe they get a ticket here and there, but for the most part, the vast majority of people in this country see the police as part of their lives. Like they're the same to them as the red light and the stop sign. Like they're like, all right, these people are here, they represent something. So
I never been beat up by a red light.
yeah, but that's the whole thing, right? Like when you think about it, right? Like again, we as because we're in the criminal defense world, you're in the immigration world, you're seeing civil rights violations. We see so much of the things that go wrong. Yeah. Remember, the majority of people, they're of the mind that they can reason with them.
I blame
They're
law-
reasonable.
And people's perception is that they don't want to be perceived as doing something wrong when they haven't. Which most of these people that are interacting with people, law enforcement, they've done nothing, so they have nothing to hide.
Exactly.
And
So
it's
try to
that
explain it.
openness. And these are people that have oftentimes not had much interaction at all with like law enforcement in general, right? Exactly like the touch points that you're saying, like it would be a stop where they are told like you are either getting a ticket and you're going away. People that have had more exposure have different perceptions. Yeah. But most of the people that they're seizing now are not people that have had any criminal history or any touch points with these systems, which makes it even more difficult because they've been told like, comply.
See, like this is our society brainwashes us to think that police are the heroes and the good guys. And like we have like every source of media from the news to like comic books to like television shows to movies to cartoons to child programming who put police as the people that you go to for emergencies to heroes that you can trust in and that they're to help you. They are there to enforce the laws, to assist in arrests and prosecutions. Mm-hmm. That is their job and role into society. Period. End of discussion. That is it. Their role is limited. So like it is this false understanding. We incarcerate more people than any other country on the planet. Yeah. The idea that we are not so connected to the realities of what policing is in society. This raid that happened on Canal Street recently, and to see the uproar is great. When I was a public defender at Legal Aid Society in Manhattan, those raids happened quite often when I was there, and I was in arraignments, and we would get baskets full of these counterfeiting cases where the NYPD would do sweeps on Canal Street, and they would arrest a lot of these West African migrants for counterfeiting operations, and like. It's the same shit. The shit we're seeing with ICE right now didn't just pop out of nowhere, right? This is my soapbox moment, okay? Didn't just pop out of nowhere, right? This is decades.
That camera, it's closer to your face.
It's been decades and trillions of dollars of resources put into this shit. It is like we should be continually as upset now with seeing how ICE and the federal agencies are interacting with citizens and society. We need to continue this and then continue this with local law enforcement and policing in general in America. Is this the country we want to live in? Like this is policing? It's crazy.
So I think that this is literally what he's describing and what you're describing are the convergence of a series of factors that have been steadily taking away any kind of freedom, right? Like we have always lived under this mythology, right? That if you do the right thing and you work and you pay your bills and you pay your rent, you're gonna save some money in your savings account and you're gonna buy a house, and in the United States you're gonna do that safely because we have police and we have laws and we have all these things. But now you can be in a federal courthouse crying because your husband is taken away, and the person who allegedly who works for the government, who's there to protect the interests of the people, will beat you down in the hallway, and nobody stops them. Right? And when you think about the Canal Street thing and the Legal Aid Society being out there and all these people scream, and you see this woman who's standing in front of an HSI truck, and she's the Palestinian kid with the rock, right? She's putting her fingers up, she's pointing her fingers at this HSI truck, and they all stop the car and get out and start attacking her. And a group of civilians go, "What are you doing? You can't beat up a woman for flipping you off." Right? And they try to take her. At first they try to take her, but then when they realize there are 40 people standing in between them and her, they get back in the truck and leave.
Yeah, the power of the people.
Yeah, no, and I think there's no secrets that the law is limited and often a tool of oppression to reinforce norms that do not look like people in this room, and that's why a larger part of our portfolio is also advocacy work. It's really activating people in the community. We can't presume also like education, right? We know what a level 1, level 2, level 3 stuff. People don't I didn't grow up learning that. I literally was taught.
We do have an episode which you can learn about all 4 levels. Get on the YouTube page and just go a little earlier.
That's why the integrated approach has to be we're in the courtroom, but I've also done a lot of advocacy work to just talk about how are we advancing laws that center people, that center our humanity, that center our values, where we know it falls short. And we're recognizing in this moment how short the laws are falling, but the community organizing piece is the X factor to unlock all of the change that we need. It's not, we can only vindicate certain interests in a courtroom. It's a very limited role. So we've had to tap into advocacy to really advance not only policy, but humanity.
But also there's no protection, right? Because here's one of the big things, right? If you have your permanent residency card, and it says your country of origin on it, and you're carrying it around, and ICE stops you, no, I'm a permanent resident. They're gonna take it from you.
They say we don't think it's legit, and then you're still in detention.
Have you seen the video of the guy with the U.S. passport?
Yeah.
And he shows them the U.S. passport. He's got a slight accent. He goes, "I'm a U.S. citizen. I've been a U.S. citizen for 15 years. Here's my passport." Why is he carrying his passport around? Because he was going on vacation.
You know what's crazy? About that? When I testified in the Floyd case, the first stop I testified to, I had my passport on me. And I had my passport on me because I had gotten stopped so much as a kid. This is in the early 2000s, right? I got stopped so much as a kid, and this was back when if you did not have ID, you were going to the precinct, you were getting fingerprinted. It was a whole fucking issue.
But they still do that.
They still do that. I mean, but
they created the statute to make them do it.
I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a passport, so I would carry my fucking passport on me because I had that many police interactions. It is the same fucking shit. It is the same fucking shit. And to mention about knowing, yeah, I know DeBoer. I know the levels, right? I know the levels of the stops, right? I know Terry's. I was involved with I was a plaintiff in the stuff. I don't think, now in hindsight, I sued the cops again as an attorney. In hindsight, all that knowledge now isn't going to stop and wouldn't have stopped none of those interactions when the police violated my rights.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, the law doesn't stop the bad thing from happening.
Exactly.
The law is there for recourse, and we all work in the law, so we know. The bad thing happens because there's a lot of deference built into the law for law enforcement. We talk about police safety, which seems to make it into every Supreme Court decision.
Yeah, fucking police safety.
And how that informs, even extraneous circumstances and how they've kind of created that web. So attacking that is a larger political movement, because when we talk about policing in this country, we're having very different conversations depending on how you look, how much money you have, where you come from. There's an understanding here about what that conversation is about. There's an understanding of our community. There's a healthy skepticism of police are not always there to help. They're there to criminalize and to do that. But the reality is that we've, even some of the movement that was made during 2020, when we're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, we're talking about all of the advancement. We're talking about funding our communities. We're talking about removing resources from these militaristic police, and we're trying to advance racial justice and accountability. There's always been a pushback, right? I mean, some of the candidates that are running, even in the mayoral race, have had to temper down some of the reforms. And when we talk about the bail law reforms, which historically have created equity, and not perfect equity, but have advanced racial justice in a way more so than other, the discovery law reforms, all of those were rolled back and attacked.
Yeah,
And it was,
yeah,
this claim that, and the hypersensitization of criminalization, and uplifting these stories that are, sensationalist, that reinforce realities that don't exist. I mean,
facts don't matter anymore.
Since
Alternative facts are the reality facts. Apparently.
Since you represent the tell me the organization name again.
LatinoJustice PRLDEF.
Latino Justice. Say it again.
PRLDEF.
PRLDEF. Wait, all right. So can you just for the viewers who are Spanish speakers who are going to watch us because of you, can you say in Spanish for them or in whatever dialect you feel most comfortable speaking of the Spanish language? Number one, it is extremely important to assert your right to remain silent.
Yeah,
and number two, the police, law enforcement, any agent can in fact lie to you.
Yeah.
And number three, you have the right to an attorney. It doesn't mean you get it the second you ask for it. So you have to be patient enough to give your attorney something to work with to defend you. Can you say those three things to the community?
I'll have to remember. Bueno, la primera es que tienes que conocer tus derechos, que conozca tus derechos. La segunda es que debe mantener tu silencio. Cuando te están preguntando, no lo tienes que responder. Y al final que tiene el derecho a un abogado criminal que te pueda ayudar con tu caso. Y lo más importante es que te protege a tu capacidad.
Okay. And in the immigration context, please advise them, do not identify your country of origin to ICE or to any agent.
You shouldn't even make statements. Because lying to federal agents is a crime.
They don't have to. They have the right to remain silent.
Right,
Just
exactly.
do not identify.
Right, and don't say anything to
make sure they
federal
understand because they make
not,
point number one of the evidence.
I'll qualify with saying that
yes.
each situation is super individualist.
Yes.
Right? We can speak in general platitudes, but as you said, there are bad actors in the law enforcement space.
All of them. Sorry.
I'm not
just kidding.
And I have to be tempered. If I'm talking about my personal capacity, I have very strong convictions and views. But I'm representing my organization. We do a lot of policing and prisons accountability work where we hold law enforcement accountable to the letter of the law, which is an important function. It is holding these systems of power, whether it be NYPD. We have a long history of suing NYPD, whether it's operating in Texas, Florida, all the other states. Holding these bad actors are accountable and a shining light in the court is one way, but also the advocacy, like the CCRB, like all of these things that we're having to do. One of the even more recent things that we're doing is the Alan Felice case. So I'm not sure if you're all familiar. There was an individual that was killed in his apartment by a police officer. And then there was...
in the city?
Yeah, in the city.
The mental health episode?
It may have been, I'm not sure. But his name was Alan Felice.
I'll be right there.
And
he'll look it up.
And
unfortunately,
this individual was killed by a law enforcement officer. That officer went into disciplinary proceedings. There was a lot of advocacy to make sure that this person was terminated. This person had a long history of civil rights violations. Ultimately, the CCRB, which is the commission that reviews police actions for misconduct.
The Civilian Commission.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of qualifications. There are a lot of problems with CCRB.
A lot of problems.
Because there's not much accountability.
They don't have a lot of power.
But they actually made the right decision.
It's because all they can do is make a recommendation and then
unless
the commissioner can
Mandami gets
overturn it.
mayor, and then they'll have a little bit more power.
And they...
He'll do his best.
So they made the recommendation to terminate the officer, and the NYPD commissioner did not follow through on their recommendation.
Of course.
And so now we're challenging that in court, saying, look, this is a clear, broken process where people are pointing this process saying there is no accountability for when police overstep, and this has created a culture of invincibility for them that allow them to continue to create this harm. When we're talking about damages, that's not enough for someone's life.
Yeah.
That means that this person is no longer here. The minimum that we can do is hold this person accountable and terminate them, and then go through the process to really vet what happened and whether this was appropriate.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of a case that we're fighting back in the policing and prison. And those are the types of cases that we bring. I mean, we bring cases that talk about confinement, right? Because we're talking about people on the street. When people are confined, there's also like circumstances that are really awful. When we talk about Texas, there's some of the most gross violations of human rights for people that are incarcerated. And people that are incarcerated still have the right to humanity, to dignity, to respect. It may not be on everyone's like first kind of mind, because a lot of ours is harm reduction. We're trying to keep people out of cages and to take them out of cages. But when people are in these cages, they are still human. There is still a letter of the law that protects them. And so our work is a combination of those things, holding these systems accountable, pointing out the blatant contradictions, and advancing the law, trying to protect as many people as we can with that as well. So that's another large part of our work that focuses on the systemic things, the way that people are interacting with law enforcement. How can we improve the systems that we're holding up is working, right? Because when the CCRB passed, there was great fanfare about how things were going to change. But we realized that reality, even most recently with this case that we've been involved in, that that's not the case, and that we still have to hold, even in New York City, where people have said that, you know, we've progressed so far, we're so far advanced, we still have got a long way to go. We are still over-criminalizing, over-policing our communities, and it's disproportionately Black and Latino men and community members. And so that's a fight that we still have to have every day.
I guess, is there a part of the Latino justice practice that gives you the most hope, or has having the most progress in the last few years?
Look, I think our leadership development program is really important, but it's not to say that that's under attack. The Supreme Court decided in Students for Fair Admissions that affirmative action programs in colleges and essentially DI work is kind of like inverse racism. Like if it creates a burden or a benefit for any other person, that essentially it's wrong. But that hasn't stopped like our organization from saying like, there are not enough Latino lawyers. Like I didn't know any Latino lawyers growing up. Yeah. I think I met my first one when I was in law school, which I was already like 27 years old by that time. That's a long time to not do that. And so a lot of our work is really focused on creating a pipeline to fortify, you know, people that are going to fight, people that are culturally competent, people that come from the communities, people that care about the issues that impact us, people that have seen the harm firsthand, right? People that have a different way of looking at the law, that are skeptical, that are healthy skeptics of trying to change these systems.
Hell yeah.
And so the leadership development is a really important part of that because it gets them engaged early in the process. It creates a sense of community, which I did not have. Even as I went through law school, I had to find that community. And it gives them a pathway, right? It makes the pathway that we all trailed easier, a little bit more demystified. It connects them to people in different industries and opens their eyes. So I think that's the most hopeful part of our work. The other work is just we're defending tooth and nail with everything that we have. And as you all know, because you're on the front lines of different fights, it's exhausting. I mean, you get home some days and you're like, I don't want to do anything besides just lay here. But you know you're going to have to get up in like 2-3 hours because you're going to have to do it again. Yeah. And right now with this administration...
Or do a podcast about it. So when it comes to the leadership development, like what is like, how does someone get within that pipeline? What is like, for the audience, like how exactly are you developing young people who want to go to law school into young lawyers? Like what?
So yeah, the first thing I'll do is go to our website, LatinoJustice.org. You can sign up to subscribe to like our newsletter that'll connect you to like our network. So we do it in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. We host like events where we're just doing like kind of similar to like a podcast where we're just doing like panels. We're talking about emerging issues. We're talking about pathways to the profession. So that's a great way to just connect with people that are in different industries and different legal fields to get your curiosity. And that's one way that we engage. The second is that we host like a series of events that engage students from like undergraduate all the way on through to like post-grad. So we really try and set them up for success. Like if you're taking the LSAT, like let's demystify that. We just had our law day where we host, I think like hundreds of law schools, and we tell like prospective students, come in and just talk to somebody that's in the law school admissions. Like understand that process, understand what they're looking for. Like just connecting them to people in these positions, A, creates a sense of comfort for them. It's not like they're just attacking this. B, it fortifies like their personal and like professional capital, their social capital, which again, like coming from like speaking, I didn't know anybody in this. I had to like really put myself out there, and it's still a challenge, right? Because there's not that many Latino lawyers. And then we host class fellowship, which is like connecting them to like positions that they can work on and then they potentially get a job offer. And then it's all kind of like arranged, but it's really like basic pipeline work where we're really focusing on how we continue to improve access, to demystify the process, to make it simpler, to take some of that pressure off. Because a lot of these students come and they're like so scared. They're like, I know I want to do this, I just don't know how. And being able to connect with them and give them that little bit of faith. Some of these students, and I think several thousands that we've connected with now have gone on to have incredible careers where they give back, to Latino justice, whether it's monetary or through their volunteer or through other things. So it feeds our work as well. But it creates an ecosystem of community that I think is really important. I mean, that's what we're leaning into now more than ever, because that's oftentimes all we have. Like, the law is limited, but that sense of community is what's going to get us through. And that's a lot of what we do through that work.
Shit, that seems like a good place to end this episode, because going back in the other direction is depressing as fuck.
I just want to ask, is there any way that people who are interested could provide support, funding, anything? Do you guys take donations?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, you can find out LatinoJustice.org. You can donate, you can sign up for our newsletter. There are ways that you can get involved. We often have like volunteer events. But we need your support now more than ever. I mean, this administration has gone to town on nonprofits writ large. I mean, funding is a huge issue. And however you can support us, whether it's monetary or just showing up, is really important and critical.
Oh, yeah.
And isn't there something that AWS is doing right now for donations?
Yes, you can check us out at givebutter/attorneyswithswag.org. It'll come up. We need help too.
Right. So, I mean, look, these are two great organizations. You got a Latino Legal Aid Society lawyer right here. You got a Latino immigration and electoral rights attorney. If you really care about these issues, like, put a couple dollars into each organization and take the time to really help the community.
This is more important now than ever, because the federal funding is going to be cut, and this is now when the fight is like.
Look, have you seen, given the fact that these issues have become as prominent as they've probably ever been in the last decade, has funding increased, or has the government's effects on grants and stuff like that?
It's fluctuated. I mean, this is probably the hardest time that all organizations, nonprofit, because when this president and administration came in, they came in with a mandate to really effectuate Project 2025. So part of the build up to like all of the work that we were doing now was like looking at literally this outline that they said was not the outline coming into full effect. And one of the prominent things
defund everything
was to defund and to destabilize nonprofit organizations that are doing community-centered work. And that's exactly what we've seen. We represent clients and community-based organizations that have had their funds frozen from the administration. We're talking about billions or millions of dollars that make a huge difference in any nonprofit, because the margins are already tight for nonprofits. I mean, you're operating with huge overhead costs, limited staff capacity, limited resources that you can expend, and huge issues. I mean, we're tackling like policing and prisons, immigration, voter suppression, economic justice, which we didn't even get the chance to talk about. Like, we're talking about like the disparities across the board, and very slim and thin margins. And when that's being attacked, it's even harder. I mean, a lot of organizations have to take a step back. They've had to assess, like, how can I fund this particular project, even if that need is great. And we've been, fortunate that in years past we've had like funding booms, but it's difficult now because even funders and foundations are feeling that pressure from this administration, which impacts all of us.
And look, small donors are a substantial part of this thing. And like, look, I understand that milk is really expensive, eggs are really expensive, everything is really expensive, but like, that's not going to change as long as we have insane tariffs, high inflation, greedy corporations, and the people in this room, the AWS organization, the Latino Justice Organization, they're the ones who are advocating for your interests. They're the ones who are trying to make sure you have the information you need and make sure you have the tools you need. So if you can make a donation to them, you really should, right? I do it. Dave does it. We volunteer our time here consistently because we think this is a really important issue. We would really like it if you took the time while you're watching this episode and learning so much about what the fight is to take a couple of dollars. It's not a lot. Even $5 will make a difference. Don't let the fight go because the billionaires already have all the money.
No, and the fight is here. We're fighting
now.
We're fighting for our lives. We're fighting for our communities, and you may not be impacted today, but somebody could be impacted tomorrow. So it's really critical that we support and show up for one another, whether it be through money or just showing up and speaking your voice, speaking to these issues, sharing your stories. storytelling is the only way that we're actually able to bring a sense of humanity to these issues.
And remember, HSI and ICE backed down because there were 40 people protecting that woman. So the more of us stand up for each other and stand together,
Peacefully.
the less of them they can stop.
Well, self-defense, you know.
Well, no, they were peaceful. They didn't hit anybody, they didn't hurt anybody. But you know what? Those 4 guys who wanted to beat up that woman for exercising her First Amendment right, they backed down when people were like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Okay? And so you have to be willing to at least join your organization, get on the email list, watch the episodes, learn what's going on. I'm telling you, this is what the fight is.
Be
It's
willing
not
to
it's
defend
not an
yourself
actual
and
fight.
others.
It's presence. Be part of the community.
Yeah, and there are many ways you can tap in, right? Like just getting the newsletter, being informed, you're able to carry that message, and that's a really important part. I mean, reaching as many people as we can.
You may qualify for
No, I mean we also have, like, if you're in law school, like we have programs that are set up to benefit you. You could be one of our future clients, right? Like if you're experiencing harm, we want to hear from you, and we want you to be a part of our network. There's not enough of us that can carry this message out, and reaching more just makes our movement more cohesive, and it allows us to show up in ways that make sense and that are aligned with your values, because we want to represent you and your community and your values, and we're a part of your community as well. And you're not alone. I want to say that that's the biggest thing. There's a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of fear. All of us in this room are fighting that fight, and it's important to name that. And I think that's more or less what I'll leave you with, is that we're here to fight at Latino Justice for all of our Latino communities, and we're here to fight for your civil rights.
Well, that's a great place to end it. This is really good, been a good episode, an emotional one. Before we leave, is there anything you want to tell the audience? Website, your own social media, if that's your interest, whatever you want to tell the judge.
Yeah, no, at Latino Justice, follow us on social media. You'll be able to keep up with all of our things. Pitch in, no donation is too small. And I think the point that you hit, like every bit that we can come together makes a huge difference, whether it's showing up or showing out or giving that donation. So please donate, please become engaged. Know your rights, tell other people your rights, and stay involved.
And Mehdi, I realized when we started the episode, I didn't give you guys a chance to say hi to the audience, but they should know you guys. But let them know where to find you guys.
Highs and buys.
I'm still Mehdi Essmidi. The website is essmidilaw.com, ESSMIDI law.com, and the phone number is 917-905-2527. You can reach out to us anytime. We'll put you with the right people if necessary.
David Ourlicht, Ourlichtlaw.com, 917-572-8599.
Yeah, it's a nice website. It just came out. It was on the previous episode.
Yeah.
So
finally got
there.
Yeah.
And as you guys know, I'm Eugene
Probably
Toussaint.
come down pretty soon. But
Catch me if you can.
Wait, remind them about the fundraiser.
Oh, yes.
November 3rd.
And we have a fundraiser coming up. It's actually this Wednesday, November 5th. The information will be right here. The link will be live even after the fundraiser. So if you like what you see, if you believe in us, if you want to support us, please donate. We're working our way towards taking this nice, lovely set out of my living room, out of my wife's hair, so that we can have a community center in which we do these episodes live, so we can have more community engagement. People can ask live questions right while we're recording, and then we'll do things like workshops and seminars, things to just make this law more accessible to the community. But outside of that, catch me if you can in arraignments.
And please vote.
Don't catch me.
Don't forget to
don't
vote.
go to arraignments.
Yes. Yeah. Please vote. Yes. This episode will come out right before voting season.
Yes,
right?
please.
Right before Tuesday.
Yep.
All right. We're out of here. Thanks you guys for watching.
Yeah.
Should've seen it coming like a prophecy. Cause the work got us moving with velocity. We beastin' now, it's some monstrosity. We the plug to the source, unshockingly. Wow, what's he really gonna do now? Jolts in your system better stay on the ground. Votes in the circus is a spark to the sound. The energy that entered me are jewels in my crown. Wow, that's how it's always gonna be. You'll never really get it like NRG. Could do without the static and the flattery. Chill for I catch a charge like battery.
No style, what? Turn your energy up. No work, what? Turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. No style, what? Turn your energy up. No work, what? Turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up.
energy up.
Turn your energy up.
Energy up.
No style, turn your energy up. No work, no what, turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. No style, turn your energy up. No work, what, turn your energy up. Too wild, turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. Turn your energy up. No weakness, just energy. Just energy. Just energy. No weakness, just energy. Energy, just energy. No weakness, just energy. Just energy, just energy. No weakness, just energy. Energy, just energy. No weakness, just energy. Just energy, just energy. No weakness, just energy. Energy, just energy.